Machiavelli said something that most people are not ready to hear. He said there are only three kinds of minds in the world: the mind that understands things on its own, the mind that understands things when they are shown to it, and the mind that understands nothing at all. But what Machiavelli did not write in that one sentence is what he spent the rest of his life showing, that within those three categories are 5 distinct levels, 5 levels that determine how far a person rises, how much power they hold, how clearly they see the world, and how easily they can be controlled by someone who operates at a higher level than them. Today you are going to find out exactly which level you are at, and more importantly, how to move up. Most people believe intelligence is fixed. You either have it or you do not. You were born with a sharp mind or you were not. Machiavelli rejected this completely. He was not a philosopher of innate ability. He was a student of deliberate development. He watched men of ordinary intelligence outlast and outmaneuver men of extraordinary natural talent over and over again. Because raw intelligence without the right orientation is not power. It is potential that never gets used. What Machiavelli cared about was not how smart someone was at birth. It was how they had chosen to use and develop the mind they were given. And from decades of observation in the most brutal political environments in history, he mapped 5 distinct levels. Each one is a complete way of seeing and moving through the world. Each one has specific strengths, specific blind spots, and a specific ceiling, and each one can be transcended with the right understanding. Here are all 5. Level 1. The reactive mind. The first level is where the majority of people spend their entire lives, not because they are incapable of more, but because no one ever showed them there was more available. The reactive mind does not think, it responds. It is operated almost entirely by feeling. When something good happens, it expands. When something bad happens, it collapses. When it is provoked, it reacts immediately. When it is flattered, it opens completely. There is almost no space between the stimulus and the response. The emotion arrives and the behavior follows, every single time. Machiavelli watched political operators use this mind as raw material. It was almost too easy. Provoke them into anger, and they would make enemies they did not need to make. Flatter them, and they would reveal information they should have protected. Create a threat, and they would react in ways that served the person who manufactured the threat. The reactive mind is the easiest mind to control, because you do not need to convince it of anything. You just need to trigger it, and it will do the rest for you. The person at this level is not stupid. They are simply unaware. They have never been taught to pause between feeling and action. They have never developed the capacity to observe their own reactions before becoming them. And so the world moves them constantly. They are moved by news, by other people's moods, by social pressure, by the latest outrage, by whoever spoke to them last. They are reactive because they have never learned to be anything else. This is the first level, and the exit from it is a single skill: the pause, the deliberate space between what you feel and what you do. That pause is the doorway to everything above this level. Level 2, the informed mind. The second level is where people arrive when they discover that information is power. They begin to read, they begin to study, they accumulate knowledge with real enthusiasm. History, psychology, strategy, philosophy, business, human behavior. They become the most informed person in most rooms they walk into. And for a while, this feels like intelligence itself. But Machiavelli would draw a sharp line here, because information and wisdom are not the same thing. He had seen countless men of enormous learning make catastrophic decisions, men who could quote the great philosophers but could not read the room they were standing in, men who knew every historical precedent but could not adapt when the situation in front of them had no precedent, men who were full of correct information and completely wrong about what to do with it. The informed mind mistakes knowing for understanding. It accumulates data but struggles to synthesize it. It can tell you what happened, it often cannot tell you why, and it almost never knows what to do next. There is also a specific trap that the informed mind falls into. It begins to believe that having more information is the answer to every problem. So when a decision is difficult, it researches more. When a situation is unclear, it gathers more data. When action is needed, it reads one more book. And the accumulation of information becomes the replacement for judgment rather than the foundation of it. Machiavelli would respect the informed mind for its discipline, but he would tell it directly. Knowledge that cannot be converted into decisive action is not power. It is an expensive hobby. The move from level 2 to level 3 requires something that no amount of reading can give you. It requires the willingness to be wrong. In public, with consequences. Level 3, the strategic mind. This is the level where things become genuinely dangerous for everyone else. The strategic mind does not just gather information, it converts information into advantage. It looks at a situation and immediately begins asking questions that the lower levels never think to ask. Who benefits from this? What is the real incentive here? What is being shown to me and what is being deliberately hidden? What will happen 3 moves from now if I take the action that seems obvious today? Machiavelli lived at this level. He wrote from it. Every observation in The Prince is the product of a mind that had learned to see past the surface of events to the structure underneath. The strategic mind understands that most of what people present to the world is managed, not necessarily dishonest, but curated. People present the version of themselves and their intentions that serves them, and the strategic mind, rather than taking that presentation at face value, asks what the presentation is designed to achieve. This is not cynicism, it is clarity. The strategic mind also understands time in a way that the first 2 levels do not. It does not optimize only for what feels good or correct right now. It optimizes for what produces the best outcome across the longest useful time horizon. This is why the strategic person often appears cold or counterintuitive to people at lower levels. They are making moves that do not make obvious sense in the immediate moment, because they are playing a longer game than everyone around them can see. The limitation of this level is that it can become purely transactional. The strategic mind, without the development of deeper wisdom, can begin to treat every relationship and every situation as a resource to be optimized. And this creates a specific kind of isolation. The person at this level becomes effective, and also sometimes alone in a way they do not fully understand. Level 4, the wisdom mind. The 4th level is where intelligence becomes something genuinely rare, because reaching it requires something that most strategic people resist. It requires the humility to recognize the limits of strategy itself. Machiavelli wrote about this in a way that most readers miss. He wrote about Fortuna, the unpredictable force of fate and circumstance that could destroy even the most carefully constructed plan, and his counsel was not to become a better strategist. It was to develop the wisdom to know when to act, and when to yield, when to press, and when to wait, when the plan is right, and when the situation has changed enough that the plan itself has become the problem. This is wisdom, and it cannot be learned from books. It can only be earned through experience, through having been wrong in consequential ways and surviving it, through having been right and watching it still not work out, through the slow accumulation of real encounters with real complexity. The wisdom mind does not believe it has all the answers. That is precisely what makes it so effective. It holds its conclusions loosely. It updates readily when new evidence arrives. It knows that the most dangerous moment in any endeavor is when you become certain, because certainty stops you from seeing what is actually happening. The wisdom mind also sees people differently than the strategic mind does. It does not primarily see resources or threats or tools. It sees human beings with their own complexity. their own fears and ambitions and limitations and potential. And this deeper seeing allows the wisdom mind to influence people in ways that pure strategy never could. Because people can feel the difference between someone who is maneuvering them and someone who actually understands them, and they respond to genuine understanding with a loyalty that no strategic manipulation can produce. Machiavelli himself was moving toward this level in his later writing. The Prince was strategy. His later work was something closer to wisdom, the recognition that enduring power is not built through cleverness alone. It is built through a depth of understanding that cleverness serves but cannot replace. Level 5, the sovereign mind. The fifth level is the one Machiavelli pointed toward, but rarely described directly, because it is almost impossible to describe. It can only be recognized. The sovereign mind is not simply smarter than the other levels. It is operating from a completely different relationship with reality. The reactive mind is controlled by its circumstances. The informed mind is shaped by its knowledge. The strategic mind is defined by its goals. The wisdom mind is guided by its experience. The sovereign mind is governed by none of these things. It is governed by something interior, a clarity of values so deep and so settled that external circumstances, pressures, threats, and seductions cannot move it from its course. This is not stubbornness. Stubborn people refuse to change their position. The sovereign mind will change its position the moment the evidence requires it. What it will not change is its fundamental orientation, its sense of what matters, its commitment to seeing clearly and acting from that clear seeing, regardless of what the crowd demands. Machiavelli saw this quality in the very few historical figures he genuinely admired. Not the most cunning, not the most knowledgeable, not even the most strategically brilliant. The ones who seemed to operate from an interior authority so complete that the world had to adjust to them rather than the other way round. These were people who had done something that almost no one does. They had gone so deeply into their own mind that they found something stable there, something that did not shift with every change in the weather of circumstances. And from that stability, they made decisions that looked effortless from the outside, but were the product of enormous interior work. The sovereign mind is not a destination, it is a practice. You do not arrive at it and stay there. You return to it every day through the consistent, deliberate cultivation of self-knowledge, honest self-assessment, and the willingness to be guided by what is true rather than what is comfortable. This is the highest level, and unlike every level below it, reaching it requires nothing that is not already available to you. It requires only the commitment to go inward with the same rigor and honesty that the lower levels apply to the world outside. How to move up the levels? Now the most important question: how do you move from where you are to where you want to be? Machiavelli's answer was deceptively simple. You study yourself as carefully as you study the world. Moving from level 1 to level 2 is straightforward. You read, you study, you expose yourself to better ideas than the ones you currently hold. You become a student of history, of psychology, of human behavior. Moving from level 2 to level 3 requires something harder. You must begin making real decisions with incomplete information. You must stop waiting until you know enough and start learning from the consequences of acting before you do. The strategic mind is built through action, not through study. Moving from level 3 to level 4 requires the hardest thing of all: honest failure. You must be wrong about something important enough that it forces you to revise not just your tactics, but your underlying assumptions. This is not something you can rush, but you can accelerate it by actively seeking out your own blind spots, by asking people you trust to tell you the hard things about how you operate, by treating your own defeats as more valuable than your victories, and moving from level 4 to level 5. That is not a strategy, it is a deepening. It happens through years of genuine self-knowledge combined with genuine engagement with the world. Through the slow integration of everything you have learned about yourself and everything you have experienced, You cannot force it, but you can choose to keep going inward. And every time you do, you get a little closer to the place Machiavelli pointed toward. The place where nothing outside you has the power to determine who you are inside. 5 levels. 1. The reactive mind, controlled by feeling and circumstance. 2. The informed mind, rich in knowledge but short on judgment. 3. The strategic mind, converting information into deliberate advantage. 4. The wisdom mind, knowing the limits of strategy and operating beyond them. 5. The sovereign mind, governed from within regardless of what presses from without. Machiavelli spent his life in rooms full of powerful people, and what he found was that the most powerful person in the room was almost never the loudest, almost never the most formally educated, almost never the most obviously strategic. It was always the person who knew themselves most completely, who had gone inward far enough to find something stable, and who operated from that stability without apology and without performance. That is available to you, not as a gift, as a practice. Start today. If this shifted something in how you see your own mind, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want to keep going deeper, subscribe. We are just getting started.